As a first-time homebuyer, you can't be expected to know everything about the home buying process. And that's why I'm here to help you make your decisions and move through that process with as much knowledge as possible. So today what we're going to talk about is how to find the right lender for you. So we're going to talk about things like choosing the right company, understanding the Section A fees, which are the fees that come from the lender, turn times and how they affect your goals when you're buying a property, online reviews from different lenders, what to look out for when shopping lenders, and cheap versus closing confident. Now, let's first talk about choosing the right company. Now, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of mortgage companies that you could potentially choose from when you're trying to decide who it is you want to work with for your mortgage. And everyone has different goals in mind or is looking for different things from that lender. Some want the lowest rate, some want the lowest cost, some just want a higher level of service and availability from that lender. So you need to decide what's best for you. But not every lender is going to be the same, and you need to keep that in mind. The rates could vary from one to the next. The costs can vary from one to the next, just because every company operates differently, whether it's a bank, a mortgage broker, or it's a direct lender. And if you want to know the differences between those types of mortgage companies, please watch my video comparing the three to give you a better understanding on how each of them work and operate and how each of them earn their compensation. But you need to determine what it is you're looking for in your lender. Now, it's always a good idea, in my opinion, to compare 3 to 5 different companies when shopping. This way you know you've seen almost everything out there. And at some point, there's gonna be too much information. I think that's when you go beyond 5. But if you stay at 5 or below, I think you're going to be happy with the information that you receive, and you'll be able to make an educated decision when it comes to the lender you decide to work with. Now, as far as costs are concerned, you're going to want to focus on the Section A fees. And when I say Section A fees, you're probably like, what are Section A fees? You're going to receive a document from lenders called a loan estimate. On the loan estimate, there's going to be 3 pages. On the second page, you're going to have an itemized breakdown of all of the costs that you'll incur when buying the property, with the mortgage specifically. The top left corner of that document is going to have Section A. It's A, Section B, Section C, D, E, F, so on and so forth. What you want to focus on is Section A. You really can ignore the other sections for this main purpose of finding the right lender, only because Section A contains the costs directly from the lender. The rest of the costs listed on that document are going to be the same regardless of the lender you decide to work with, because they're third-party costs, and the same third parties are going to be involved with your purchase, whether you use one lender or another. So you want to focus on the Section A fees, so this way you know what that lender is charging you to provide the mortgage. Now, they might give more than one option, so you'll see those fees are going to vary in Section A from one option to the next, but that's where you need to focus when it comes to cost. This is separate from rate. This is strictly based on the cost or charges from that lender. Now, once you agree to terms with a lender, those charges in Section A cannot change unless something were to happen during the transaction allowing them to change. An allowable change would be you decided to put more money down, or the value of the property came in lower on the appraisal than what you initially agreed to, and they have to make adjustments. Your credit score drops. You change the type of loan you're getting during the process. Those are changes that allow for Box A fees to change. However, if those things do not happen, any fees listed in Box A have 0 tolerance, meaning that the lender cannot increase them on you all of a sudden at the last minute. You might have heard nightmares that friends or family had in the past where they were told one thing by the lender up front, and then at closing it completely changed. You're protected from that happening nowadays because these are 0 tolerance. If they were to change the fees in Box A or Section A at the time of closing from what they were initially, without there being a substantial reason to do so, as I mentioned, then the lender actually has to cover the increase. So they would have to pay what's called a tolerance cure to offset any additional charges they decided to add in at the last minute. So make sure you're looking at Box A. What's in there, as long as your rate's locked and it's the terms you agree to, will not and should not change at the time of closing. Now, another thing you want to talk to the lenders about are their turn times. Now, you might ask yourself, what are turn times? Turn times are the amount of time it takes them to move through each step of the process. How long does it take to actually go through processing? How long does it take to go through underwriting? How long does it take to go to closing? Right? There are turn times, or the amount of time it takes for those things to happen, and they're not the same from lender to lender, right? Some lenders and banks could take 30 or 45 days to move through those different steps of the process, where a direct lender such as us, we can do that in 7 calendar days, right? And as far as a contract is concerned, in most cases, the faster you're able to close on a property, the more attractive it's going to be to the seller of that property. So when you're talking about turn times, you want to ask those important questions for when you do go under contract, right? That's when those matter. When you're getting pre-approved, you also want to know what the turn time is for the pre-approval. Once you speak to the lender, how long is it going to take them to actually provide you with a pre-approval letter? Is it going to take them a day? Is it going to take them a week? Because if there's a home that you're interested in, time is of the essence. And working with a lender who is going to take a week, for example, to turn around a pre-approval when you've already found a home you're interested in, is potentially going to lose you that home. So the turn times on the front end as well, the pre-approval process, are going to be just as important as the turn times once you're under contract for a property. Now, you should also be looking at online reviews. And I'm not talking about going to the lender or bank's website directly to read reviews on their site that they have full control over. I'm saying do a Google search or go on a Zillow, for example, and read reviews from past clients to see what they have to say about their experiences with that lender. If you're seeing a bunch of 1-star reviews about a lender, even if they offered you a low interest rate, and most of those reviews are telling you that they didn't deliver on what they said up front, well, it's probably not going to be the best option to go with that lender. But reading online reviews and sorting them by most recent is really going to give you a good indication of the type of lender that you've been speaking to and whether or not it's someone you're going to be comfortable working with based on the previous experiences. If they're a 5-star lender and just about everyone who's worked with them has written a 5-star review and boasted about how amazing their experience was, there's reason to believe that your experience should be no different than those. So I personally believe, outside of rate and cost, I think the reviews and the reputation of the lender is even more important, because someone can promise you the world, but if they can't deliver on it, it doesn't matter what they tell you. Now, what you also want to look out for when you're speaking to lenders that I feel are important are going to be the response times. If you send a text message, if they allow for text messages, or you call them or you email them, how long is it taking for them to actually respond back to you? Are you waiting minutes? Are you waiting hours? Are you waiting days? Right? I know if I've ever applied for some sort of credit, I don't want to wait days for responses between me reaching out or trying to get an answer on something. I think everyone wants instant gratification. So if I was making the decision on who I want to work with, I want the fastest response times. I feel like I couldn't sleep at night wondering what's going on if I needed the answer to something that I felt was important as a buyer. So response times are extremely important. Are they quoting you rates with limited information? Anyone can quote an interest rate. You can just go online and you can type in your scenario and you can look up an interest rate. It doesn't take much to do that. But how accurate is that rate if the information that the lender has about your scenario is limited, right? The information that's given to you by a lender, right, in this case about rate, is only as good as the information you've given to them. And so the less information they have, the less accurate the information they're giving to you is going to be. So if they're quoting you with limited information, I wouldn't necessarily trust that. There are definitely times where I'll receive a phone call from a buyer and they'll say, what's your rate? Well, there is not just my rate. I don't have a rate. It's going to be what rate you qualify for based on multiple things. Your credit score, how much money you're putting down, the type of property you're buying, whether or not you plan to occupy that property as a primary residence. Right? These are all things that are going to affect the interest rate. So there's not a one-size-fits-all rate, and I think that's a common misconception. So if anyone's quoting you an interest rate and saying this is our rate, without having information from you to quote it accurately, is doing you a disservice. And are they giving you an unclear cost breakdown? I mentioned that you're going to receive a loan estimate. It's going to have an itemization of costs but are they unclear in what charges are from them, what charges are from third parties? You want to be fully clear on what you're getting into, what your costs are going to be, and what to expect, so there are no surprises other than good ones when you eventually are under contract and make it all the way to the closing table. And cheap versus closing with confidence. Now, I think there's always going to be someone who's willing to do a job for less. I love this picture here. I see this all the time. I see a lot of realtors post this photo. I think it's funny. It just shows a drawing of a horse, that the back half of the horse is drawn by a professional artist and the front half is drawn by a 2-year-old. But I guess the point is there's always someone willing to do the same job for less, but it's the result of doing it for less that's going to be different. I've never met someone who's going to do a job the cheapest and is going to provide you with the best, right? Think about if you were remodeling your kitchen, are you going to just choose the cheapest option because it's the cheapest? What if it's the worst materials that could possibly be used, or the craftsmanship? At the end of the day, I think it's important to work with someone who's reputable, maybe not the most expensive, but definitely not the cheapest. By doing the shopping I mentioned, 3 to 5 lenders up front, you're going to be able to find that middle ground, the person you're comfortable with, the person that's fair on price, offering you a very fair interest rate, and is providing everything you feel is necessary to feel comfortable with your home buying process. But I can tell you from experience in other fields, the cheapest is definitely not going to be the best. So if you felt this was good information in this video, you have comments, you have questions, make sure to put those below. I do respond to 100% of the comments that are made on my page, and follow me for more great mortgage and real estate tips.